Welcome to Thriving Your Love, a podcast where we will guide and help you improve your most precious relationships in life. This podcast is produced and hosted by certified emotionally focused therapist Claudio Vargas Silva, licensed marriage and family therapist, and Trisha Kim Walsh, also licensed marriage and family therapist. Welcome back, viewers and listeners, to Thriving Your Love with Trish and Claudio, and we wish you a very happy 2025, the first podcast recording of the new year. And we talked this morning, right, Claudio, about how in our last episode, we recognized we needed more time. We needed a part two for this topic on unconditional worth. So our hope is today to continue this dialogue about making meaning about worthiness. And it's a topic that impacts every part of our lives, Claudio, from being in what we're going to focus on in taking our first breath, becoming a human being, experiencing childhood, feeling the first moments of connection to our caretakers or the lack thereof. How does that affect our worthiness? What does that mean to us and how it informs every part of our lives? Again, a topic that's all near and dear to my heart, and I'm looking forward to exploring this more with you, Claudio. So let's kick it off, and I'm going to turn it over to you, and we'll begin discussing the importance of understanding our relationships to our caretakers, our parents, and what happens if we don't feel that we're getting the love we need.
Yes, Trisha. And in our last podcast, as you said, we had said that we would focus more on childhood. And when we talk about childhood, we talk about attachment. And that's how everything starts. The moment that a child is born, the child is seeking to attach. So this is something that is inside of us from birth. It has a lot to do with our survival. So we see how attachment, love, and survival, they go together because we think, well, if I am loved, I have a more chance to survive. Well, the child doesn't think about it. And even as adults, we don't think. But this is so spontaneous, so natural inside of us because our brain is a relational brain. So our brain is seeking constantly attachment. Everything we do in life to feel attached. So this is what gives meaning to our lives, is to attach, to be connected. So the child is born and is already trying to connect, and the child is sending cues. For us adults, we love those cues. We become so, like when we see a child and what the child does, those faces, those noises. So all those cues bring us towards the child. We feel that we want to connect to the child, and then it starts this cycle of connection, that the child is seeking connection and we are giving that connection because we want to care. We feel pulled like towards the child. But there are some things that happen during childhood that can break that connection, that might make it hard for a child to feel connected. There can be so many factors. And when the child doesn't feel close, doesn't feel connected, so the child thinks there's a problem with me. So there's the magical thinking. And the child won't blame the parent. The tendency is to blame oneself. And this is because of the attachment system as well. Like if I blame my parent, then what I will do? I will go away, or I will try to replace this parent. As children, we cannot break up from relationships as adults. So what the child does, it's much safer to blame oneself. And then that's how it originates, this problem with worth. So the rift in terms of connection, of attachment in childhood is gonna hurt more this sense of worthiness, Trisha.
Yes, Claudio. And it is the number one topic that I feel I have started to see much more in the trends of individual therapy. When a client comes in, acknowledges throughout a lot of their life, they have acknowledged a certain level of that inner critic balanced by that perfectionist that was trying to make every effort to get it right. And the costs are so enormous is if I don't get it right, then I'm undeserving. I'm unlovable. I'm unworthy. I'm not good enough. And it's amazing how what is happening in our lives as adults, if we give ourselves the permission to be vulnerable enough to really dive into previous memories as a child, we really understand our origin story of what was life like for you as a child. How did you know you were loved? And a lot of my clients, and sometimes myself, Claudia, I've shared with you too, that my own father had a difficulty with his own worthiness, that when he felt depressed, he would withdraw. He would shut down and leave to go golfing, to focus on his work, or even in his drinking, to be away from the family. And his mindset was, when I'm not in a good place, I don't want my family to see me like this. But for me as a child, Claudio, I felt I did something wrong. So I can really relate to what my clients are sharing. And even I know from a genealogy perspective and in internal family systems, we call it a legacy burden. I know my dad also had parents that would emotionally distance themselves from him when they were going through financial struggle or going through their own anxiety and depression. And not all Asian cultural practices, but talking about emotions, talking about needs, unless you're providing your food, shelter, love is through items. Love is through keeping you alive and helping you to survive and giving you great education. That these are all reminders as our viewers and listeners are taking this in and recognizing all that we don't know about what's going on for the caretaker, for our parents, that when they distanced, when you're a child from your own evaluation, your own abilities, because keep in mind, your brain continues to be developing until 25. You're making meaning of the most logic, as if you are away from me, that must mean I'm reconciling that I must have been the problem. I must have done something wrong. And who's to tell you otherwise? Because your fear is if I go to you and say, did I do something wrong? Sometimes my clients remember as children and teenagers going to their parents, and then they would be shut down and say, stop making a big deal about this. Don't cry. Don't get upset. It's, you're making a bigger deal than you need to. That heightened even more worry and more anxiety of, oh, I'm so bad that we can't even talk about it. So these are some examples. And I know, Claudia, you have examples that we talked about earlier too, that I welcome you to share with our listeners.
Yeah, and you said about like child going to the parent and trying to reestablish the connection and say, hey, I noticed something wrong and I'm feeling bad. And this is hard for me. And being dismissed by the parent, which is really hard for the child. But the parent also doesn't know sometimes how to reassure the child. And the response that they give is a defensive response because they also didn't learn from their childhood how to talk, how to express feelings, and how to receive vulnerability and honor vulnerability, right? What you said about, for example, a parent with depression that happened to you, and also it happened with me that my mom has schizophrenia. So that was something extremely, extremely confusing for me as a child. When we think about what happens for a parent, because the parent never wants to hurt the child, but the parent doesn't know how to deal with their own problems. So, for example, a mother was telling me about when her children, they were still with her, she suffered from depression. And she thought that she was causing a lot of suffering to her children, to her family. She made a decision to go to the garage and to stay there smoking. So to remove herself from her family because she thought, I'm not a good company to them. I'm not making their lives better. So I should be by myself. But what happens with her children, right? They felt abandoned and they thought, well, she doesn't love us, she doesn't want to be with us, and there's something about us that we don't deserve her love. So imagine, it's so hard for the child to understand because the child thinks that the mother or the parent is removing oneself from them because that parent deliberately doesn't want to be with them, that parent doesn't love and like and enjoys being with them. So they cannot understand what is happening with the parent because the mother had a good intention. Imagine she was thinking, well, if I am away from them, they're gonna feel better. And it was actually the opposite. But that's what she was thinking. The children cannot understand that. Even if the mother would say, well, I am in the garage because I'm not feeling good, I'm not feeling well, and I don't want you to feel hurt by my presence. The
Right.
children will still not understand. They will think, oh, you just don't want to be with us. You don't like being with us. You don't enjoy our presence. We don't bring happiness to you. And they even might think that they are causing the parents' depression because they are not good enough. There is a problem with them. We are talking about depression here. It can be so many things that can cause children not to feel loved and feel disconnected from their parents and think it's because of me. There is some problem with me. I caused this. And then they bring this to adulthood. And when they are adults, they're very sensitive, very suspicious. They are like hyper vigilant. Anything they see might be a sign for them. I'm not being loved. This person doesn't love me. They don't want to be with me. It hits that wound from childhood. It's so hard for them because they bring their childhood with them. And what we do in this podcast, Trish, and what we do in therapy, we are trying to help people to overcome these traumas from childhood because people don't realize they bring this with them and they don't know what is happening. They are still living that traumatic experience from their childhood, and they are in some way using those lenses that they still have from childhood, and that they're trying to find meaning of everything in the present, but with those lenses still, and they tend to damage their present relationships because of that, Trisha.
Exactly. And as we talk about depression, we can also talk about anxiety and stress around what does a child, and we know this, Claudia, working with children, being around children and teenagers, is they're highly resilient. So what happens when you are not able to know what really is happening because your brain can only process so much information? And even if you're asking and you're protesting, come play with me, spend more time with me, come to my performances, come to my events. And a parent, a caretaker will do the best they can, but we also want to highlight that families often are doing the best they can to financially support their families, so that time might be limited. So it might be the time that I'm overdoing this with my child, I could also be providing more and doing more by providing a better life. And I think that that is the gift that any caretaker parent wants to give to their child, is a better life than the one that they received. But it really is a balance for a parent to navigate their well-being when they're anxious of, are we going to have enough money for food on the table? Are we going to have enough money to pay the bills? And I mean, I'm looking at one socioeconomic background, but I also recognize I work with clients that are really well, that have abundance, and recognize that there is also a transgenerational process of them feeling, am I worthy enough to be a good parent? And the way I show my ability to be deserving in the world is by making more money. And so perfectionism can be an outlet in work. So I want to translate that briefly to, how does that show up from childhood, adolescent to adulthood, when that anger and that protest turns inward? And I've seen a high level of internal anxiety, that imposter syndrome, as many call it in Silicon Valley, and really what imposter syndrome is to question, am I really worthy, good enough, translated into the work front, into the work system, because there's a question, I'm going to be discovered. My greatest secret is that I'm not deserving. I'm not good enough. I'm a fraud. I'm an imposter. I'm putting on a show. I'm an actor on stage, but deep down inside, if only people knew. And this happens so much in couples therapy, right, Claudio? I have so many partners that will often say, I cannot be vulnerable with you. My fear is if you really saw how unlovable, and we know that this is not true, but if we've had an attachment system that made us seek evidence that said, well, if you really loved me, mom, dad, caretaker, then why didn't you spend more time with me? The problem is me. That anxiety reflects in that anger and protest is I won't ever let that happen again. And I see how that translates into a romantic relationship and the perfectionism and high expectations that an individual has of themselves and of their partner.
And you said about like a parent spending time with the child, and the child, if it doesn't happen, right, the child feels like, oh, there is a problem with me. For a child, it's extremely hard to understand why a parent is physically present but doesn't engage with them, especially now that parents are working from home and sometimes they have a nanny to take care of the kids while they are working. So I know nannies that they tell me what happened. So if they are with the child by themselves, they have a good connection with the child and the child is happy. But when the parent is close by, the child starts like pushing away the nanny because they want to connect with the parents and they think the nanny is standing on the way. Like, in other words, they are with their actions, with their behavior, they are treating that nanny badly. Is it's like they are saying, hey, go away. You are preventing me from being with my parents because if you are here, they are not gonna connect with me. So you are standing between me and them. And some parents, what happened is that in their own childhood, sometimes they were raised by nannies and babysitters. Some their parents might be really wealthy, or might be from some country that there were maids that would take care of the kids, and then that parent doesn't see the importance of them connecting with their children, and their children are trying to get time with them, are trying to do everything they can, and what they do is that they protest, they become rebellious, and their behavior becomes very problematic, which sometimes drives even their parent more away because the parent becomes upset at the child, the parent might punish the child, and it's so hard because it becomes a cycle, right? The child is trying to call the parents' attention, is protesting for the parents' distance, and that protest is seen as that the child is bad, is misbehaving, and then the parent tries to stretch that child up and punish, and then it becomes even worse because now the child was trying to feel loved and trying to get attention, and the attention that the child gets is criticism, punishment, scolding. So it becomes that cycle because the parents don't know how to reassure the child, hey, I am here, I love you, you are important to me. And the parent doesn't understand that they need to spend time with the children. For example, one thing that is very, very important for children is playing. And if parents spend time playing with the child, that brings connection. The child feels loved. Instead of playing, which is something fun, what do parents do many times? They correct the child, they scold, they yell, they punish. It becomes the opposite of playfulness. It becomes the opposite of joy, happiness. So the child feels totally disconnected. And as you said, the child will bring that in and think it's because of me. There's a problem with me. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve my parents' love. And the child will focus a lot on perfection, on performance. I have to do something. I need to be good. But can you imagine thinking that I need to be good, I need to perform, I need to be perfect, but always feeling like you are failing? And it becomes an obsession that the person brings to adulthood of thinking always about performance, about being perfect, about being good enough, but never feeling they are good enough. And Trisha, it's so sad because can you imagine if if you have this experience in your childhood that I say it is a traumatic experience, even if you were very wealthy, your family were wealthy, but you didn't feel loved and you didn't feel connected, and then you bring this to adulthood and you become always trying to perform, always trying to be good enough, to be perfect. And there's so much preoccupation with that, and you are always constantly stressed. So what a life! It's a wasted life that we can never relax and feel like we belong. And this is what we are doing right here. We are trying to get people out of this cycle that they can enjoy relationships, they can enjoy connection to their children, connection to their partners, connection to their co-workers, to their friends, and think that they are good enough, they are worthy of love and belonging.
Yes, Claudia, really our emphasis is what is the antidote here? Like, what's the solution? And I think we can agree this is a systemic experience that, at least in this country, I'm seeing more often than not from a mindset of work. Constantly finding connection through doing more, not focusing on what we need most, which is connection. We need that. Love is what keeps our planet going. It keeps our civilization going. Thousands and thousands of years, we are biologically willed to attach. And what does that mean is, as a parent to a child, to look into their eyes and when they're yearning to play with you, to know that what they need more than anything is to have you, to have access to you. And if you, as a parent, don't feel like you have access even to yourself, find connection around you. There's connection all around us. I think for so many of my clients, trust is an issue. Is if I'm feeling unlovable and undeserving and unworthy, where do I go? Well, a lot of people go to their spirituality. They go to their therapy. Some choose, to go to their medications. I think, Claudia, we're here to acknowledge that there's so many resources to help you get more connected to yourself so you can be more connected to the people that deeply love you, because you are that source of love. It's not, of course, you get the gold medal, you get the trophy, you get the A+. All those things are great affirmations to say, look at me, I'm doing well in life. And we applaud that in society. We really look up to those folks, right? We want to be the superstar. We want to be on that winning team. Most importantly is we want to be a part of a community. And so I think, Claudia, we were talking about earlier about how this is likely a theme we're going to continue to be reflecting, not only about how it affects our nuclear families, but how does it affect our ability to connect as a people, of what happens when we're in a society of depression, of anxiety, of stress, and all of this is happening inward. And what we're really trying to create spaces, Claudia, in our podcast and our blogs and our workshops is, how do we create connection? We want to role model that because we recognize we want that in our lives, but we also want that in the lives of our families, the children and teenagers we provide therapy for, our couples. So I am also acknowledging, viewers, listeners, that this is not a one size fits all. It's an internal journey that we have a lot of skills and are very confident that we've dedicated our careers to researching and understanding and talking about. We do see a path forward. It's an exciting one. It does focus on connection, community, love, and resources. So I'll pause there. I know we're getting close to end of time today, Claudio, but really naming I am a therapist. I bring spirituality into the room with clients if they're open to it. And I always ask for permission. But something that, again, Claudia, this very well. I am really deeply diving into not only emotionally focused therapy, which is a model I absolutely adore by Dr. Sue Johnson, but I also love the work of Dr. Dick Schwartz, Internal Family Systems. And he really humbly acknowledges, as the founder, I discovered this in modern day, but this has existed from the sands of time. Like that we have everything we need within ourselves. And that is, we are all unconditionally worthy. From the moment we are born, every single person on this planet is worthy. And there's something really, to me, powerful. I mean, it's not just, we get gold stars because we're humans. It's to say, everyone is deeply intrinsically worthy. And it is our path to continue to be in spaces that make us feel worthy, with friends, with family, with work, finding a closer relationship with family. I have one couple I'm working with. One of the partners has felt a detachment from their family, but they're choosing to do family therapy so they can get back into connection. So, Claudio, I'm sharing a lot, as I know were right at that time, but I'm appreciating this beautiful sentiment, the spiritual sentiment that we as a human species, we are all deserving of love. We are deserving of equality. We are all deserving of being reminded every day that we deserve unconditional love and we are whole. We are not broken. We are flawed, but we are all deserving to be reminded that just by being human, you are worthy.
And I liked what you just said, like that we are flawed. And you said, but we are still worthy of being loved. This is so hard for people sometimes to understand. When we had these experiences in our childhood of not feeling accepted, we cannot put that together. It's so hard to put that together. Like I'm flawed, but I'm deserving of love. I deserve respect, deserve to feel important, and I don't need to fix this being flawed because we will always be flawed because we are human beings. So what it means is that I am worthy right now, right now. I don't need to conquer. I don't need to do anything to get that, to deserve that, to deserve to belong or to be loved. What I need to do is that I just need to believe I can be right now. And it starts with me liking myself unconditionally, because if I do, I can then believe I can savor. But while I am still thinking that there is something wrong with me, it's hard for me to trust. It's hard to trust that someone can accept me when I don't think I deserve it.
Right, Claudio. And this is a process. And we acknowledge that as we talk about this as a topic that's near and dear to our hearts, I am a humble student of compassion. I think that is something that I'm working toward as a therapist and as a human being in 2025, especially. And we welcome you to join us at our podcast to continue doing more deeper diving, connecting to the self, to others, and our beautiful world.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Glad to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. We hope you'll join us soon again for our next episode of Thriving Your Love.